Hi guys, Irina here and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. In today's video, let's talk about these two phones, the newest Galaxy S22 Ultra and its predecessor, the S21 Ultra. Let's take a closer look at the actual differences between these devices, and of course, in this video, I'll compare the camera performance of these phones, so let's begin. A few words about the design of these phones. They look completely different. The S22 Ultra has this familiar Galaxy Note shape, which frankly I'm not a big fan of. I see too much of a brick in this phone. I don't like the angles. They seem too sharp to me. Well, technically they're not sharp, they're 90 degrees, but you know what I mean. And it's super subjective and always comes down to personal preferences, but if you ask me, I would choose the Galaxy S21 Ultra in terms of looks and design, even though I'll admit I'm in love with this phantom white finish on the Galaxy S22 Ultra. When it comes to the displays, they both have a 6.8-inch AMOLED display, but the display on the new S22 Ultra has a more advanced technology, so this display is superior in terms of brightness and visibility in harsh sunlight, and also it has some new display features that the S21 Ultra doesn't have. And I want to talk about the actual difference in brightness. Well, I'm currently indoors, the auto brightness is disabled on both phones, and if I put the brightness to the max, you will see that the S22 Ultra is noticeably brighter than its predecessor thanks to the extra brightness feature on the new S22 Ultra. And this is the max brightness the S21 Ultra can reach indoors, because if I enable the adaptive brightness on the S21 Ultra, it will just get dimmer. But when it comes to using these phones outdoors, the adaptive brightness comes in handy because you can reach the peak brightness on both of these phones. But I'll be honest with you guys, while I can see that the new display on the S22 Ultra is slightly brighter outdoors than the one on the S21 Ultra, it's not like this difference is a game changer. I mean, it's just slightly brighter outdoors. I can't even show you this difference on the video because the camera won't pick this up. Still, I'm impressed with the new display of the Galaxy S22 Ultra. I absolutely love this extra brightness feature. I like that this phone is more versatile when it comes to adjusting the brightness. As a user who doesn't like to use the adaptive brightness, I really appreciate the fact that I can go beyond the max brightness on this phone when I need to. So the Galaxy S22 Ultra definitely seems more appealing to me when it comes to display and the visual experience. However, I think the S21 Ultra still has one of the best displays on the market today. It's still really good in terms of brightness and the visuals. It also supports 120 Hz refresh rate, giving you this smooth experience and this premium feeling of a top-tier phone. Next, let's talk about the camera performance of these phones. Both have quad cameras with the main camera, an ultra-wide camera, and a dual telephoto camera. And while Samsung claims that the camera of the new S22 Ultra has so many improvements and upgrades, I'm more interested in the actual camera performance. So let's look at some side-by-side photos. It's important to note that both phones were updated to the latest version before all the photos and videos were taken. I've noticed that most of the time, whether using the main camera or the ultra-wide camera, the S22 Ultra provides more contrasty looking photos where the colors appear deeper, while the S21 Ultra makes everything look brighter and less contrasty. But of course, you couldn't go wrong with either of these phones because they both provide incredible shots. Just a few words about the portrait mode. Once again, you could see the recurrent pattern here in terms of contrast. I would say the S22 Ultra provides more realistic colors. To me, it's especially noticeable when I look at my clothes. However, my face is better exposed in the photo from the S21 Ultra, and usually it looks more flattering in the portrait mode, as if you use some soft boxes in the studio. But at the same time, I love this more realistic approach of the S22 Ultra. I think this photo is the closest to what you would actually get if you used a professional camera in terms of colors and exposure. I don't know about you guys, but when the S22 Ultra just came out, I was really curious to see if the space zoom has improved in any way. And the short answer is yes. So these are 100 times zoom photos, and as you can see, the photo from the S22 Ultra looks noticeably sharper and I would say less pixelated, which is great news. But let's take a look at the other photos and see how these phones compare when it comes to telephoto cameras. And when we're talking about up to 10 times zoom, I don't think there is any noticeable difference in performance between these two phones. However, I've noticed that the 30 times zoom photos look better from the S22 Ultra, providing sharper and less pixelated photos. And once again, when it comes to 100 times zoom photos, there is definitely some improvement in picture quality in the photos from the new S22 Ultra. Next, let's talk about the videos. When it comes to video stabilization, I think these phones are equal. They both produce very smooth videos, even though I was walking pretty fast. And when it comes to random daylight videos, the videos from the S21 Ultra always look slightly more vivid, which I think looks nice. But at the same time, while this difference is noticeable, it's not that dramatic. When it comes to front cameras, both of these phones have 40 megapixel cameras with an 80-degree field of view. And looking at the selfies side by side, I would say the photos from the S22 Ultra have slightly more contrast, but other than that, they look practically identical to me. Now let's test the sound quality and the video quality of these phones. So this has been the sound from the S21 Ultra, and now I'm switching to the Galaxy S22 Ultra. So this is the sound from the S22 Ultra. What do you think, guys? Any difference? With the S22 Ultra, Samsung focused on nightography, trying to improve the photos and videos that we take in low light. Comparing the night modes, in most cases, there is definitely more texture and clarity in the photos from the S22 Ultra. I've noticed that the focus is really snappy on the S22 Ultra, even when it's super dark. I was able to get the shot on my first try, while the S21 Ultra kept struggling with the focus, so I didn't manage to get a single good shot. But at the same time, as you can see, in most cases, the S21 Ultra still takes pretty good night shots. When it comes to videos, even though the S21 Ultra produces brighter looking videos, there is obviously more texture and contrast in the videos from the S22 Ultra. However, when it comes to complete darkness, the S22 Ultra manages to get a brighter looking video. Well, the quality is questionable, but at least you can see what is happening there. Now let's open the camera apps and see if there is anything new on the S22 Ultra. And there are a few things I want to point out. The first thing I found curious is that the portrait mode on the S21 Ultra actually offers you more zoom options than the S22 Ultra. The 2x zoom in the portrait mode was removed on the S22 Ultra. Well, no biggie, but it's still interesting. By the way, now with the S22 Ultra, you can also take night portraits. Another thing is that the S22 Ultra has this new auto FPS option in the settings that can automatically adjust the amount of frames per second for brighter videos in low light. The S21 Ultra doesn't have it. And when it comes to all these different creative modes in the camera app, these phones are pretty much identical. There is nothing really new on the S22 Ultra. The director's view is here, the slow motion, hyperlapse, portrait videos, everything is exactly the same here. Next, let's talk about the battery life and charging features. We have a 5000 mAh battery on the S21 Ultra as well as on the S22 Ultra. Speaking of charging, if you own a 25-watt charger, it will take just about an hour to fully charge either of these phones from 0% to 100, and you could expect a slightly faster charge speed with a 45-watt charger. If you get this super fast wireless charger duo, the charging will be quite slow because this thing is just 15 watt. It will take about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And also, let's not forget that both of these phones support reverse wireless charging. This feature is called wireless power sharing on Samsung phones, so you could charge other devices that support wireless charging. When it comes to battery life, from my experience, these phones feel pretty much equal. I cannot say that one has a noticeably longer battery life than the other, but what I definitely can say is that both of these phones have a very solid battery life, so you won't be disappointed with either of these phones. A few words about the S Pen. Yes, we have the built-in S Pen on the Galaxy S22 Ultra, but let's not forget that both of these phones are compatible with the S Pen. Of course, if you're an active stylus user, it would be more convenient for you to have the S22 Ultra with the S Pen always on hand. But at the same time, you could always get a case for the S21 Ultra with a slot for your S Pen. The only thing is that from what I've seen, these cases are usually pretty bulky, while the dimensions of the S22 Ultra are hardly larger than the S21 Ultra. So there are some little details to consider, but of course, eventually it will depend if you actually need to use the S Pen. Next, let's talk about the speakers, and right away I'll tell you guys that out of all the phones I've tested, the speakers on these two phones are my favorite. I think these phones have some of the loudest speakers on the market today. Both phones have stereo speakers, the in-display speakers, and the bottom speakers. Speaking of one of the most important things, the sound quality, it's really good on both phones. Even when it's set to the maximum, the sound is pretty clear. However, comparing the sound from both of these phones, I would say the sound on the S21 Ultra is actually slightly louder, but this difference is not that significant. Both of these phones have mind-blowing speakers. When it comes to biometrics and security features, both phones have an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor and the face recognition. Comparing these phones side by side, I cannot say that either of these phones has a faster fingerprint sensor. I would say they're pretty much equal. Same thing with the face recognition. And in general, I've never had any problem with unlocking my phone, whether I was using the Galaxy S22 Ultra or its predecessor. Next, let's talk about the overall performance of these devices. Both of these phones are the Snapdragon Snapdragon versions, so this S21 Ultra runs on Snapdragon 888 and the new S22 Ultra runs on Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. I think it goes without saying that both of these phones are very capable and fast. You could throw pretty much anything at these phones, it's not gonna be a problem for them. Of course, every year we get an even faster phone, and no doubt the Galaxy S22 Ultra is even more capable than its predecessor, and all the benchmark tests will prove it to you, but the chance that you will actually feel any difference in performance between these phones is very small, especially if you're an average user. So far, from my experience, the only weird thing I've noticed is that the export of exactly the same video in the video editing app actually takes a bit longer on the new S22 Ultra, but this difference is just a few seconds, so I don't really care about it. It doesn't really affect my productivity. However, if I run any benchmark test, the Galaxy S22 Ultra will always finish it first. A fun little fact is that these phones have exactly the same price, at least at the time of making this video, and at the same price, I think the choice here is pretty obvious. I would always suggest you getting a newer model, especially if you're gonna use this phone long term. However, if you want to save some money and manage to find the Galaxy S21 Ultra for a better price, or decide to get a refurbished model, in this case, without thinking twice, go for the S21 Ultra, because this phone is still incredible, and as you can see, the difference between these two phones is not significant. That's all for this video, guys. I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.